I want to explain a little bit about the confusion. It's just a perceptual misunderstanding of the way we're labeling things and the way we were conditioned from the moment we came in to call certain things and to look at certain things, and the stories of labeling and meaning making that we've received about this idea of what romantic love is. And there's a lot of polarity conversations out in the world now, in the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and the polarities and what they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to act. And I hear a symphony of feminines saying, I need to feel safe, I need provision, I need protection. And I'm not saying there's anything at all wrong with those things. However, if you look at those three things that women often name that they want to feel from a masculine in order to feel that they can come into their full feminine blossoming, those are all survival concepts, aren't they? Safety, provision from someone outside of us, and protection are all an old architecture. And so we really need to update the software, and we really need to kind of pick apart some of these cultural stories that we've been telling ourselves and say, wait, what really is this, and what's really happening? Because what's happened is we've evolved spiritually, but our nervous systems have not evolved enough to have the capacity to hold the kind of love that we remember. So the memory of sacred union and the reality of the capacity to actually create it and hold it within our own self right now, in our own inner polarity, there's not an embodied capacity yet to create that. And so to resolve that, it's going to require really changing the paradigm. We're not just going to be efforting in the old one, which is what it looks like when we get relationship advice and we go to couples therapy, where we're just kind of negotiating all these old survival paradigms and trying to figure out who's going to submit or give up what so that the two can be okay. The goal of sovereignty between two beings is that both beings have already self-actualized within themselves, so that those sorts of codependency issues that we find so often in our relationships really start to fade away. And what we're now dealing with is not an opposite polarity charge as chemistry that pulls us together of two incomplete polarities. What we're seeing is two resonant fields choosing, not through magnetism, but through resonance, very different energy, to harmonize. So the old paradigm of attraction, the opposite of attraction, is two incomplete polarities being charged together to complete something. And so we get locked into these loops where one person holds one side of the charge and the other person holds the other one. Or if it's a long-term stable relationship, it tends to, if it's in the survival paradigm, be a codependency where there's two incomplete fields that couple together and create one field. And that's not a bad or awful thing, but what happens is when it's time for that field to end, it can be very painful because we've literally attached our architecture to the other person. And so when we have to disconnect that, it can be incredibly destabilizing. So it's not to say the way we've been forming relationships is bad or something we should be ashamed of, or that we're not smart or any of those things. It's just the way it's been. That was the adaptive strategies that we came up with, and they were really brilliant. If you look at it, how are we going to adapt to this bizarre experience of being in this polarized place, and not only in relationships, within life and childbearing and all the different aspects of life. And so we don't want to look at any of these things as bad or wrong or not real or any negative shaming. We're just saying they were adaptations, and they were just an incomplete response because that's all that was available. And we look back at our ancestors and I say they were doing the best they could with what they had. And now we come into this generation and we have a lot of new tools that can shed light on some of these mysteries that we call, like, what happens to me when I fall in love, or I want to be swept off my feet. All these metaphors that we put are about being destabilized, right? And it's like, is that really what you want? Is that really what love is, to be destabilized and to have your field collapse? And I don't think, if we really look at it with a different lens, and if we step back for a moment, that that's actually what we do want, and yet we've been programmed to believe it is.